hear about this, they go, "Oh my, oh, like what is all of this?" They get confused. Okay, but then the ones that are that have heard about this, that have started to study about this, they will tell you that when you talk about the different versions of the Quran, when you talk about the seven Ahruf, he says they will just say they will repeat whatever they've been taught by their teachers. But he said a very important thing here. He said, um, sorry, my screen went off. But okay, I guess I'm still on. So he says um, the students don't really understand what the seven harufs are, or for that matter, the details about these variations. They don't really understand it, but because that's what they have heard or what they've been taught by their teachers, they will come and tell you, or whenever you bring up, I will tell you 99% of the time, for the Muslims that know about this, when you ask them about the variations, when you ask them about the variations, they will it's because the Quran is revealed in seven different harufs. However, he goes, they really don't know what it means. Muslims don't know what it means, like your average Muslims. But then he goes on to say, but when you go deep dive, when you start studying this, he says that's when things start to get complicated. So, for the ones who are listening to us right now, if you thought this is complicated, we're just on at the beginning stage of exploring what the harufs are. He is telling us, the scholar is telling us, when you start a deep dive on what the harufs are, is when things start to get it's when things start to get awkward and complicated, is what he says. So really, Muslims have no real concrete explanation why they have different versions of the Quran. It's obvious it's a human-made book, and that's why they got into all of this confusion. Anyway, I think Jay is back. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, can you see my screen, guys?
Yes.
Okay, great. So first, we've tackled the number one answer that people give us, and that is the Ahruf are dialects. The number two, the top two that they come at us with, is that they say the Ahrufs are Qira'ats. Okay, so now we've just hit another major source of confusion. A lot of people later equated the seven Ahruf with the seven Qira'ats. Okay, a Qira'at, as we told you, is a reading tradition, right? Those are the Hafs and the Warsh and everything else. These qira'ats actually start coming about 70 or 80 years after Muhammad died, also. But the ones that we know, the seven that we know today, they actually start getting canonized and standardized about 300 years after Muhammad. And then officially, the Egyptians and the Saudis make it like a absolute standard in 1924. So their Hafs Quran, which is the number one Quran that Muslims read, 95% of the Muslims read, was just standardized in 1924, 101 years ago, or 102, however you want to look at it, just recently. So they say, the Ahrufs Akirat, right? And I understand why. The number seven shows up in both cases because it started off with seven, a haruf, and this one also says at first it started off with seven kiraat. There is a scholar of theirs, Suyuti, who says any Muslim who says the aharuf or kiraat is an ignorant, illiterate Muslim. He says because these people looked at the number seven on one end and the number seven on the other end and say, oh, it must be the same. My standing joke on this is that some of the hadiths talk about how Aisha was 7 years old when Muhammad married him. Maybe in future they'll start saying the aharuf is Aisha because it's number seven is on it. Anyways, the number seven shows up in both places, so people started collapsing the two ideas together. But again, that's a mistake. These are not even the same category. Ahruf belongs to an earlier problem. It reports about revelation, recitational variations, and how that variation was explained. A kira'at belongs to a later stage. That's a canonized reading tradition, the recognized reading systems, and and transmissions through all those schools, the different kira'ats that you have. So even if someone points to the Qira'at and says, look, the variation's still there, that does not automatically solve the Ahruf question because the two categories are not identical. And that's a huge distinction. Once you separate the Ahruf from the Kirat, a lot of the simplified answers stop working. Hafs was born 100 years after Muhammad. It couldn't have been the Ahruf when Muhammad this time was there. It's not the same thing. Okay, moving along. Oops, there we go. Even Muslim scholars admitted the meaning could remain elusive. I want to pause here and make an important point, folks. This is crazy what I'm showing you online, on your screen right now. The confusion over the Ahruf is not something critics say from outside. That image up here shows that a Muslim scholar, Abdul al Aziz al Qari, a Qari is the master of the Quran. He said that he spent more than 10 years researching the question continuously, tracing the hadith, following the other scholars, comparing views, wrestling with the issue till the subject wore him out into figuring out what an aruf is. He gave up on it. Then it says, if it can't get any more crazy, it does, that he went to a senior teacher, the teachers of the Qari, the teachers of teachers, the one who teaches the master, and his name was Sheikh Muhammad Al Amin Al Shankiti. Shankiti is a teacher of teachers, and he says, so he went to one of the teachers, the author of Adwa al Bayan. This is a very famous book. That is Sheikh Muhammad Al Amin Al Shankiti. And so I asked him what conclusion he had reached concerning the meaning of this hadith, to which he said, the conclusion I have reached is that I do not know what it means. What? It still cracks me up. After all this time saying this so many times, I still crack up going like, bro told him like, bro, I don't know what it means. This is the Shankiti. After the Sahabas not knowing anything, this is the teacher of teacher who says that answer. So he went to a senior teacher, asked for the conclusion he had reached about the meaning of the hadith, and the answer given was blunt: I do not know what it means. That matters because it shows the problem is not fake. It is not invented by some polemist. Even inside the tradition, serious students and scholars could study this subject for years and still end with uncertainty. So when someone talks as if the aruf is simple, obvious, and settled concept, that is not what the evidence shows us. Okay, so before I go any more further, or actually let me do the next slide and then I want to show you a video. Okay, this here.
Jay, let me say something here quick. So for people who might wonder who Sheikh Mohammed Al Amin Al Shankiti is, he's not even an ancient scholar, or he's not a classical scholar. He died in 1973, just recently. Okay, so for 1400 years, Muslims have no idea what the harufs are. So this sheikh is a very well-renowned sheikh. Muslims do not doubt his knowledge. So for him to say that he doesn't know what it means is really critical, because if it was at the beginning stage of this revelation, or when Muhammad said this, and or if it was after a couple of hundred years of uh, passage of time where Muslims are saying they don't really understand what it means, you might assume, okay, maybe later on they figured out what it means. But no, in 1973, this sheikh is saying they don't know what it means, what the seven haruf actually means. And the other point is what Jay said. Like, I want to reiterate on that point. Muslims almost all the time will tell you the seven harufs are the seven qiraat, almost all the time. I have debated with Muslims that claim to know this topic, and almost all the time they also say, the apologists, okay, on their level, to say that the seven haruf are the seven qiraat is actually really comical, because it really shows that they have no idea about their sources, they have no idea about their books. It shows you they do not read. Okay, so Jay gave a really good example, because he said, "Oh, if Aisha is seven, so you can claim that the harufs are Aisha." It's a very good way to put it, because just because they see the seven qiraat, they assume it is the seven haruf. However, actually, Muslim scholars have said they hated the fact that Ibn Mujahid, so the person who selected the seven qira'ats or the seven ways of recitation, is a person named Ibn Mujahid. He came on the 10th century, and the reason why he selected these recitations is because there were so many different recitations by the 10th century. This is after 300 years of Muhammad's death, or after 300 years of Uthman trying to standardize the Quran in 652. After 300 years, Muslims were still in argument. Muslims were still in argument as to which recitation was the correct one. So what Ibn Mujahid did was he went on to select recitations that are recited by majority Muslims. So when he did that, he selected seven readers. So what Muslim scholars say is they hated the fact that he selected seven, because many Muslims started to think the seven qira'ats were the seven ahrufs. And this is in numerous books. Al-Suyuti says the same thing. Al-Jazari says the same thing. Ibn Taymiyyah says the same thing. We can give you the sources where the scholars say this, and they claim that they wished he chose five or more than seven to avoid this confusion. But
Okay.
yeah, that's.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, are you guys seeing the YouTube video here screen?
Yes.
You are okay. Somehow TikTok's not showing up.
If I were to give you a blank
Okay. This is Muhammad Hijab. He invited a scholar named Yasir Qadi to talk about the Ahruf and the Qira'ats. And the scholar's reaction is, first he says, if I give you a blank piece of book, can you write the original Qira'at of Allah, the very first one? We remember Muslims say if everything gets destroyed and it's thrown in the Qurans are thrown in the middle of the ocean, we can bring back the Quran in 1 hour, right? But what Quran are you going to bring back? So he's asked, if I give you a blank piece of Mus'haf book, that's what the hijab is asking him, would you be able to write the original Qiraat? And he says, nah, this is too difficult. It's a huge problem. And then he starts saying, like, we shouldn't be discussing it openly. We should do it privately. And Muhammad Hijab is pushing him and saying, no, I think it should be easy for you to answer. And he says, no, stop pushing me. Then I'll play another series of videos in there. But here we go.
mushaf, yeah, and tell you to write what is munazzal verbatim from Allah into that mushaf with no human interference, would you write something which corresponds?
It's not an easy answer. It's not an easy yes or no. It is enough for the Muslim to believe that the
I think
Quran
this should
is...
be an easy yes or no, though. Yes, Khadi. I have to.
Okay, very, very well. So, yeah, Muhammad, after we get off this phone call, me and you, let's have a number of discussions. No problem. I'm very open with advanced students. But these issues should not... Look, it is Kalamullah, what is going to be written. It is Kalamullah. It is
what would you write?
You're pushing me. And I'm saying it's not hikmah to... Listen, I have a condition. Like I said, everything I say is going to be factual. If I wanted to do tawdiyah and whatnot, I would do it right now in front of you. There is no need for tawdiyah. The Quran is the uncreated speech of Allah. The Quran is preserved. The Quran is known. The Quran is mutawatir. And alhamdulillah, all of the qira'at are the Quran. All of the qira'at are authentic. Alhamdulillah. Leave it at that, ya akhi. Beyond this, honestly, I have no problem. We'll have discussions or take my class.
Now, there was the $1,000,000 question. He didn't answer that.
All right, let me see. Do you see the second tab here, which I've just opened up?
No, I don't see a second. I don't see a second tab, Jay.
Okay, wait. I'm playing this.
Every single student of knowledge knows.
I think it's still on the first video, Jay.
It's still on the first video. Okay, so now, share this tab instead. Oh, there it is. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, the one that says Yasir Qadi, problems with the preservation.
Yeah. Yep. Now, here he's going to describe the issue with the Ahruf, and he says, this is so difficult. A couple of great things he says in here. He says, number one, the new Muslims, level 1 Muslims, when they see this stuff, they go like, what is this? The level 2 Muslims who learn a little bit, they start regurgitating things out, whatever the Dawah says. They don't even understand that. That's the TikTok Muslims, okay? The level 1 Muslim is the regular Muslim outside of TikTok. They don't really pay attention to that stuff much. The level 2 tries to learn a little bit about it, and then they just regurgitate whatever the hell the Dawah says. And he says, not even understanding what they're saying. And he says the level 3 Muslim, the really ones who do deep dive, they go, oh my God, we have huge problems with this. Even the level 3 sits down and says that. Then he will say things about, the Western scholarship are getting smarter. People are getting smarter. They're asking legitimate questions. They're pointing to us that the emperor, quote, has no clothes. What is this, Ahruf? What is that? All the questions they're asking is legitimate. And we have huge problems and we don't know how to answer what is this Ahruf. This man is here in the 21st century. It's 1400 years later, senior scholar again, many other evidences we have, us all going, what is the Ahruf? Again, let's play this.
Every single student of knowledge knows, who studies Ulum al-Quran, that the most difficult topics are Ahruf and Qira'at. And the concept of Ahruf and the reality of Ahruf and the relationship of the Uthmanic Mus'haf with the Ahruf and the preservation of the Ahruf. Is it 1? Is it 3? Is it 7? And the relationship of the Qira'at to the Ahruf. This is a topic that when you're the beginning student of knowledge, you're like, what is all of this going on here? When you go a little bit more, you learn to simply memorize what your teachers say and regurgitate it out. And you don't fully comprehend. When you do a deep dive is when things get very, very awkward and difficult. And this isn't new. This is from the time of the Sahaba. This is not a joke, brothers and sisters. The issue of Ahruf and Qira'at caused confusion to somebody whom the Prophet ﷺ said, if you want to listen to the Quran directly, listen to Ubay. Ubay is not some even average Sahabi. He is the Qari of the Quran. He is the master. He is who he is. And he goes, فَدَخَلْ فِي نَفْسِي شَكْ. Like, what is all of this stuff? Again, this is you have asked me some very honest questions. It's the first time I'm saying these things. Many people are aware who listen to my lectures that I've mentioned the crises that happened to me at Yale. This was the issue. That the issue of Ahruf and preservation and Qira'at and relationships between them, these are very, very difficult issues. And the most advanced of our scholars, they're not quite fully certain how to solve all of the unanswered questions in there. Here's the point. These issues should only be discussed amongst people who know what the qira'at are and who understand some of these questions that are being raised.
So is what you're saying the shak that came, or not the shak, but the crisis that you had was in relation to this question of the relationship between the ahruf and the qira'at, basically?
No. The crisis I had wasn't that. The crisis I had was, that was what generated. But what was the crisis? The crisis was very simple. Traditional understandings of Ahruf and Qira'at cannot answer some of these pressing questions that are now being poked by our people outside of, by their academics outside of the faith tradition. You see, in a Muslim environment, there's always some respect that we have for the Quran. We should. In a Muslim environment, we'll press a little bit and then we'll say, okay, khalas, sami'na wa ata'na. And that's great, alhamdulillah. When you go to academia, they don't have that red line. And they're going to just, the famous story of the emperor with no clothes. They're going to just point out, no, that doesn't make any sense. Well, that's not true, and this and that. And they'll bring issues, which I'm not going to mention explicitly, that you know are true because they're in your own books. They're not inventing anything new. They'll bring you riwayat, and they'll bring you athar, and then you add to that very well-known issues of, I don't even want to be explicit. And then you bring on top of that makhtutat, and then. And it's very clear to you and to every single very advanced student and specialist that the standard narrative has holes in it. That's what I'm going to say.
Boom. The standard narrative has holes in it. That has been, we need to print t-shirts out. T-shirts with that printed. The standard narrative, all of them telling us just, oh, it's this, it's that. Here are the scholars. I've showed you evidences of books. I've showed you early scholarship. I've showed you Sahaba. I've shown you modern scholarship, Orientalists, all of them say this is a huge issue. Now he's talked about, he says that guy who said shak came. Shak means doubt. Ubay is not a normal man. He's the Qari. That's the first Sahaba, the one which is the oldest Sahaba, who says the denial and doubt came into my mind. I'll play one more video and then we'll continue on to the slides here. Again, here, he's telling in another environment what is going on. So let me share this tab instead. And let's play this.
What is the Ahruf? And what is the relationship of the Qira'at with the Ahruf? Yes. Now, this is one of the most complicated and dense questions that ulama have written about. As-Suyuti lists 40 opinions in Al-Itqan, right? Shawkani also lists them. The teacher of our teachers, Sheikh Shanqiti, the one who wrote Adwa al-Bayan, right? He was asked, what is your opinion about the Ahruf? And he said, my opinion about the Ahruf is that I don't have an opinion. This is a Shanqiti. He's so confused.
All right.
Right? A Shankiti that is so confused. All right, let's stop sharing and go back to my. Where am I going back to? Hey, I'm not doing too bad for a guy just is new to all this stuff, dude.
Real quick, I just want to say, Jay, RD, you guys are doing an amazing job. This is like super entertaining. I'm learning a lot. Everybody, just please put a WJ49 or WRD in the chat. Thank you guys for doing this. And don't forget, guys, if you guys have questions after he's done with this, we are opening it up for Q&As. So write down your questions so you don't forget it, so that we can engage with that. But thank you again, Jay and RD, for doing this.
Oh, you're welcome, brother.
Absolutely.
What did I do? While you said that, I messed it up. How did I mess it up? Oh, there it is. Okay, all right, cool. So this is a very neat commentary in here. So let me tell you.
Jay,
Yeah,
there is a warning on your screen. It's covering your presentation.
a warning on my screen.
Is it? Am I just the only one who's seeing it?
No. I see it. It's a warning that you got a restriction on your live for static images. Just press OK on the TikTok Studio.
Oh, on the TikTok Studio.
It's just letting you know that you got a restriction on TikTok or whatever.
Yeah,
but
because I gotta go
for the static image thing or whatever.
Yeah, I gotta go to TikTok Studio. Create a camp. No. Where is the TikTok Studio? Okay, there it is. All right, there it is. All right, so now back to this, back to sharing screen, back to window, back to this. Sorry, I'm talking through my steps. I apologize. Okay, can you see it now? Can you see my screen with this?
Yes.
With the power?
Yep, it's
Okay,
good now.
Okay. Freaking old man, dude. I took this step, then I'm clicking this. Let me explain to everybody what I'm doing at home. All right. So, all right. So, ladies and gentlemen, for whatever reason, the Muslims love German scholars. They do a lot of work on Islamic preservation. They respect the German scholars. What we have here is a neat comment from the German scholars, top German scholars, about this particular issue. What I want to introduce you here is is this image, and it should not be presented as though Shadi Nasser himself is casually saying this, because this is from his book. He's actually quoting someone else, and nor should it be just presented as him casually saying that Muhammad forgot the Quran. What the page is doing is reporting on Noel Decky's critical explanation. So Noel Decky and Goldzager are two top German scholars. In Noel Decky's view, as summarized here, it is that the different Ahruf can be explained by the Prophet's inability to accurately remember what he had recited earlier when he produced discrepancies in the rendition. What it is saying is this, that when they looked into the issue of Ahruf and what he said, it says it becomes very obvious that what Muhammad had done is that he's teaching different people the Quran differently for the same verse, for the same chapter and verse, and he doesn't remember that he's doing that. That he just doesn't know, and now suddenly in year 630, 21 years after he's been getting the revelations, he either his memory's failing him or he's just saying whatever comes to his mind. He's messing up big time. And when he's messing up big time, instead of saying, you know what, I might have messed up, no. What does Muhammad decide to do? He decides to do that what we often hear from Muslims on TikTok. Let me just innovate an answer. Let me do taqiyya. So he turns around and thinks to himself, oh, all this time I've been telling everybody that what I am getting and what you will see in the Quran is the verbatim exact words of Allah. If that is the case, how do I now explain away that the same chapter, the same verse has different words for it, for different people? Did Allah come and give me all these different words? How do I explain it? And so what Noldeki is saying is that he attributes it, as he says, to the prophet's court, to the prophet's inability to accurately remember what he himself had recited earlier, thus giving away to discrepancies in the rendition of the verses. So he says he just made it up. He just made it up. Now, whether you accept that or reject it, the point of this presentation is not to settle Noldeki here. The point is to show how unstable the category looked once scholars fail to define it clearly. Okay? Some scholars, Muslim scholars, ended with uncertainty. Some Western critics pushed much further and treated the reports as evidence of memory failure and ad hoc explanations. So the Ahruf problem does not only generate confusion, it also opens the door to severe critical interpretations once the traditional explanations stop looking stable. And that is what Yasir Qadhi was also saying. He is saying it looks like the emperor has no clothes. The questions they're asking us is legitimate. And then he says something very important. He says, when it comes to Muslims, he frames it as we have the respect for the Quran. We just top level, we'll ask a little question. We won't push for it. We won't ask deep dive into it. We won't push, as Muslims will not. They're afraid to do that because their imams and scholarship say, how dare you question Allah? It is the opposite with our Bible. Come on in. Sunshine is beautiful. Thousands of critical books have been written about it. You try to do that on the Quran, and you know what happens to you physically. Yesterday evening, Chris at Speaker's Corner was bloodied up and beaten up by a Muslim because he went up to Libiano in London and asked a question. Asked a question about the Islamic dilemma, and the Muslims attacked him violently for asking questions on the theory, on the Islamic dilemma. It's all over YouTube. Continuing on. So, as I said, the Ahruf problem does not only generate confusion, it also opens up door for severe critical interpretations once the traditional explanation stops looking stable. All right, let's move on to the next one. So, where are the 7 Ahruf today? Well, once we admit that the Ahruf is hard to define and cannot simply be equated with the Qira'at, the next question becomes unavoidable. Where are the 7 Ahruf? And this is where the discussion shifts from definition to preservation. Broadly speaking, you tend to see 3 major answers. One view says that the only one Ahruf remained in Uthmanic standardization, while others were effectively set aside. All right, everybody knows Uthman is the second caliph. The first caliph, his name is Abu Bakr. After Muhammad dies, he is the one who is the first guy, which most Muslims don't know this, guys, by the way. The very first time the Quran is put together into a single book, it's done under the first caliph named Abu Bakr. The second time it's put together into a different mushaf and standardized is 25 years later by Uthman. Now, someday we will have a session on telling you how they destroyed the very original Quran because it differed from Uthman's Quran, i.e., they destroyed the Mona Lisa to protect a copy that it was different than the original. Who does that? But we'll talk about that on some other day and time. But here, this is what we are trying to talk about, is that the one view is that only one harf remained in Uthmanic standardization. So Abu Bakr's Quran, Mus'haf, I'm just calling it Quran loosely, Mus'haf, which is consonantal text, doesn't have the diacritical marks. Okay, Mus'haf is a book. Rasam is the word we learned earlier. Rasam is consonantal, no diacritical marks, the dashes and the circles and all that other stuff, the makasra, etc. Some scholarship said that Abu Bakr's Mus'haf had all 7 Ahruf. Now Uthman suddenly decides only to put it in the Qurayshi dialect, so now we are missing 6. So one view says that one harf remained in Uthmanic standardization while others were effectively set aside. The second view says that some of the haruf survived within the canonical Kirat traditions, the Kirats that come much later. Some of the haruf survived. What does that some mean? Two out of them? Or some from each of them? Oh, I mean, you have 7 haruf, you took, 20% from here, 10% from there. What does that mean? We don't know. And a third view actually says that all 7 still survive in some form. Now, the reason this matters is obvious. Each of those views create pressures. If only one remained, then what happened to the others? If some remained, which ones and by what standard did they decide which is going to remain or not? And if all remain, then where exactly are they? And how do we identify them with confidence? Because we still don't know the what. What are they? So this is the point where the Ahruf discussion turns to becoming a preservation problem too, a preservation discussion in the fullest sense. Okay, the first view, as we're going to go through this, is who says the view is that people say that only one harf remained. This view is not just some random modern guess. It is tied to majorly scholarly discussions, especially through figures like Al-Tabari. Tabari is a senior, highly respected tafsir scholar for that. And those who follow this line of explanation. So the core idea is that the community was unified on one harf out of the 7 haruf in order to end recitational disputes. In other words, standardization was treated as the solution to the problem created by multiple forms in circulation. Now, as a strategy for unity, that could make sense. But as a preservation claim, it becomes costly because you just got rid of 6 of Allah's revelations. And Uthman comes in 652. He is not a prophet. He doesn't get quote unquote wahi, revelations from Allah. So how in the hell did he decide which among the 7 he's going to take into one? Because the moment you say only one harf remained, you're also saying the others did not remain in the same way. So this view may solve the conflict problem, but it does so by narrowing what survives. That is why this is such a crucial slide in the whole presentation. The same move that creates textual unity also creates a huge preservation tension. Go ahead, RD. I know you want to say a little bit on this stuff.
Yes, Jay. So the scholars, they're not just like Jay said, they're not just minor scholars. We're talking about here the likes of At-Tabari, Ibn Taymiyyah, Qurtubi, Al-Baghawi. This top scholars do in fact make the claim that the 6 harufs have been burned. If you bring this up with Muslims, if you tell them that the 6 were burned, they will lose their mind, because their main explanation today, when you show them the different versions of the Quran that exist today, their main explanation is the fact that the Quran was revealed in 7 different harufs. And that's how they try to give themselves a peace of mind. And when you tell them no, some of your scholars actually do believe that the 6 are burnt, they will lose their mind. I just recently did a debate. I have posted the clip on my TikTok live. So many of you might know who Itachi is. I went on her live and I asked her, why do some of your scholars say that the 6 harufs are burnt? Because she made the claim that the 7 harufs exist today, and she confidently said, bring me one scholar that says the 6 are burnt, because what they teach them, or what they have created in their head, is the fact that the 7 harufs are inexistent today, and that explains why they have different versions of the Quran. But as soon as I show her that evidence, of course she goes on to say, that must be just At-Tabri's opinion. But it wasn't just At-Tabri's opinion. And even if it was just At-Tabri's opinion, At-Tabri is one of their top scholars. Okay, he's studying these things, he's reading manuscripts. He has spent his majority of his life uh, compiling this. He actually had a book dedicated to the variant readings of the Quran. Unfortunately, that book is lost. And my suspicion is the Muslims must have intentionally destroyed this book, because At-Tabari goes in detail into these variant readings and explains why he accepts one reading over the other, why he rejects other readings. But suspiciously, of course, all of his work survive, but his book specifically on this topic disappears. I find that very suspicious. Anyway,
Yeah,
um,
the tradition of
yeah,
the
go ahead, Jay. Yeah.
yeah, the tradition of destroying books is so prevalent that if I may be allowed a cheeky remark in there, is that in Ramadan I have suggested that to them to have one day dedicated to burning their books in celebration of Uthman and all the folks who destroy their own books, as a reminder. But anyways, continue on. All right, let's move on to what's that? Let me see. Okay. So continuing on, here it is. Some more stuff on it. Now let's pressure test this view of one harf remain. If seven haruf are revealed by Allah as a mercy and easing for ummah, for the ummah, because that's what the hadith says. It uses these words. It says it was done as a mercy and easing for ummah. So he's giving you seven because Muhammad has asked him, please give me more because I want to help, it'll help out the ummah. So when Muhammad asks and Allah gives to help out the ummah, why would you naturally destroy 6 out of 7 of them? So if the seven Ahruf were revealed by Allah as a mercy and easing, as the hadith says, for the ummah, meaning the community, then how could Uthman, who is not a prophet, eliminate 6 of them? However, one tries to soften it, that is a real theological problem. Second, if only one harf remain, where do the differences in the qiraat that we have, the harfs and the warsh and all that stuff, meaning the reading traditions, come from? Because Muslims today still point to multiple canonical readings. So if the 6 haruf were made obsolete, how is that one harf carrying on all these variations we see between? There are variations between the harf and the warsh and the duri and the kalaf and all of them. Third, how can one harf account for the many different Quranic readings people still appeal to today? At some point, the explanation starts to strain. And then there is another layer. We even have early statements like the report attributed through Ibn Shihab, who we see up here. Well, actually, no, this is a different slide out here. This is a slide of Louis Dizon, who wrote his paper, and he's quoted a lot of the scholarship on it, where it says, according to Al-Tabri, this rasam preserves only one harf. The other 6 have been made obsolete for the purposes of unity and standardization. Right? So let me see if it was my next slide, or oops. Yeah, it was the next slide that I was talking about. Sorry. The previous slide was just another evidence to show you there's a lot of scholarship out there, all talking about how a lot of like Tabri and others have said that there only one remains, 6 were disregarded or destroyed. Okay. So again, the third is how can one harf account for so many different Quranic readings people still appeal to today? At some point, the explanation starts to strain, and then there is another layer, as we're talking about. We even have early statements like the report attributed to Ibn Shihab, saying, this is one of the hadiths that talk about it. He is a tabayin, saying that the 7 modes are essentially one and do not differ regarding what is permitted and what is forbidden. They say 7 reports are only one and do not do that. Okay. But that does not solve the problem. So you have a tabayin, the second generation. Sahaba, first generation. Tabayin, second generation. Third generation is called tabain. This dude is a tabain. He said 7 modes are essentially one, and they do not differ regarding what is permitted and what is forbidden. But again, that doesn't solve the problem. If anything, it blurs the category further. Because if the 7 are basically one, then what exactly made them 7 in the first place? You know, if 7 are one, what the hell did you need 7 for? You just needed the one. Why did Allah give? Is he having Jibril stutter and repeat things over? It's the same one over and over again. Makes no sense. So this is the issue. The one harf view may explain why the standardization happened, but it does not make the preservation problem disappear. It just relocates it. Okay. All right. All right. Now, this is the second view. It's called the middle view. It says some of the Ahruf survives within the Qiraat. Not just one, some of them. More than one, I guess. Okay? Is what they're saying. We don't know 1, 2, 3, what it is, some. Or do they mean some? 10% of one, 20% of two? We don't know. Okay? It says the canonical Qiraat, again, that's your reading tradition, harfs, warsh, and everything that people read today. The Muslims, their Quran, when they open up on the cover, it'll tell them Hafs Asim, that's his teacher. Hafs is the narrator and the student, and the teacher was Asim. And then there'll be a Duri, there'll be blah, 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 blah. It's about, you got like 40 different Qurans out there. Anyways, it says that the traditions preserve some portion of the 7 Ahruf, but not all 7 in totality. In other words, all the differences found in the Qiraat are traceable to the Ahruf. So we've always pointed out, if you go to X today, Jai and DOC a couple of days ago put a post up there talking about how they have, 20 different or 30 different Qurans, and they still call it one. And that is at right now close to 3 million views. The Muslims are having a cow over it because Jai is showing all the different qira'ats and how they differ. Their wordings that differ, meanings change, legal rulings are different between one qira'at and another one, but they still say it's one. So if you go on X, do sign up for Jai and DOC, JAI up there. Go do that, and DOC. Subscribe to them. Some great work they put out in regards to this. Much of this stuff I've learned from them too. Okay. So what it says, in other words, that all differences found in the Qiraat are traceable to one Ahruf, but not every difference that once existed among the Ahruf is still preserved in the Qiraat today. So you can see why this position is attractive. It avoids the blunt claim that the 6 Ahruf was simply wiped out. It also explains why multiple accepted readings still exist, why they have all these different Qiraats. But the weakness is also obvious, folks, which is that Ahruf survived. Which Ahruf survived? Sorry. I'm getting my pronunciations all mixed up. Which Ahruf survived? How many of them? Which, when you take from some, which ones did? Which readings map to which Ahruf? Which Qiraat? Which is Hafs using Ahruf number 1, number 3, and 5? Is Duri using number 2, number 7, number 6? What the hell's going on? And by what method do we prove the mapping? So this view reduces the embarrassment of outright loss, i.e., just wiping out 6 of them, but it replaces it with an identification problem. It gives you a partial survival in theory, but not a clean way to demonstrate exactly what survived in practice. Okay, and then the third view, ladies and gentlemen, okay, the top three, this is the third view, is that all 7 Ahrufs exist. So now this camp says, all 7 exist. That third view goes further. It says all 7 Ahruf exist in some form, scattered or preserved, pardon me, throughout the canonized qira'ats, throughout all the different qira'ats that we have. Meaning the reading traditions again. The logic again is understandable. If the Ahruf were revealed by Allah, then the companions would not knowingly discard them. So that sounds strong at first, right? But then the problem turns to a different direction again. We have documented readings attributed to companions that do not line up neatly with these later canonized qira'ats. Let me explain that. What we have is, ladies and gentlemen, is that prior to Uthman standardizing and creating his own Quran, Mus'haf, you had many, many people who were writing their own Qurans and they were writing their own Mus'hafs. But among them were two people of great importance. Why? Because when Muhammad was alive, he said, if you ever want to learn the Quran from anybody, learn it from these four folks. He named four people. Of the two among them, he said they were the creme de la creme of everybody. Their names were Ibn Masud and Ubay bin Ka'b. You recognize Ubay bin Ka'b's name from that hadith earlier. Those guys wrote their own book, their own Quran, called Mus'haf. Again, it's a rasam, but for the sake of not throwing too much of confusion and everything around there, I just keep on referring to it as a Quran. They wrote their own Quran. In fact, their Qurans were extremely popular in different mosques. Ibn Masud's Quran was, and sometimes I get this mixed up and switch on it already, correct me if I'm wrong, but Ibn Masud's Quran was prevalent in Iraq, and Ubay bin Ka'b was prevalent all throughout Syria. Now, or it's the other way around. I don't know why I just get this mental block at times.
No, you got it right. That's correct.
Okay, all right, cool. So these guys already had existing Qurans. Now, since they are the companions that Muhammad says, if you want to learn the Quran from anybody, learn from these guys, naturally, they would have Muhammad's 7 Ahruf in them, right? All the 7 would be in them. So this third tradition, or this third way of answering that all the things, all 7 Ahruf still exist, creates that problem where when we look at the documented readings attributed to the companions, they have things in there that do not line up with today's Qurans. All the Qurans they have, the Hafs, the Warsh, the Duri, and everything else. So if those readings are genuine, i.e., one would imagine if Muhammad is saying, hey man, if you got to learn the Quran, learn from these guys, that these guys would have his Ahruf in there, right? Then what are those things in their books that are not found in these new books, in the Qira'ats today? Because if they are from the Ahruf, then some Ahruf materials seems to exist outside of the later canonized Qiraat structure. That means we have some Ahrufs existing outside of today's Qiraats, that Qurans that Muslims read. There's something out there. And if they're not from the Ahruf, then this view still has a classification problem. So if Ibn Masud and Ubay bin Ka'b did not have the Ahruf, then we've got some more problems. So the all survive view, the view that everything survived, this third view that they have, avoids the loss problem of 6 were gone or some were used, but it runs straight into the problem of extra canonical companion readings. And why is it that they have these things that are not in your Quran today? What happened? So the core objection to all Ahruf still exist is, if all 7 Ahrufs are preserved within the later canonized Qira'ats, the Qurans that they have today, meaning the reading traditions, then why do we have documented readings from the companions that do not match those later, the ones Qurans that they read today? That is a problem. Because if those companions' readings are authentic and they go back to Muhammad, then some material connected to the earlier Ahruf seems to stand outside the later canonized system. But if those readings do not go back to Muhammad, then you have a different problem. Why are major companions reading things in a way that falls outside of what later becomes canonized? The people who Muhammad said, if you want to learn the Quran from, learn it from these guys. Either way, this all you can eat view, i.e., everything survive view, is under pressure. So this is where the debate shifts from an abstract theory to concrete examples. Next is what I want to show you, but I'll do this real quick because I understand. How long have we been going on for, guys? We may have gone for a little too long. 30 minutes. Okay, cool. 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 30
No, I think you're good, brother. It's been a little over an hour. Remember, we had some technical difficulties, maybe like an hour and 20. But chat, I think the chat's good. I'm still locked in. Chat, put a one in the chat if you're still good. Put a two if maybe we need to take a break. Let us know. Yeah,
Yeah, I've
everybody's
got
still good, bro. They're
yeah
engaged, bro. So just keep
yeah
doing what you're doing.
I've got about 3 or 4 more slides, and then we're done. Okay, so let me see, where did I go on this stuff? All right. So before we jump to concrete examples, I'm going to give you some examples. We need to note an important internal limitation inside this tradition itself. A report or hadith attributed to Ibn Shihab that I spoke to earlier says that the seven modes are essentially one. I want to touch upon that, and in do not differ in what is permitted and what is forbidden. Ibn Shihab is not a random late nobody. He is a tabayin, second generation, meaning a disciple of the companions, someone close to the early transmission system and stream. And the meaning of the statement is straightforward. One mode cannot make that, you see the quote up here. One mode cannot make uh, cannot make something lawful while another makes it unlawful. That means one harf cannot make another harf say something is lawful and another harf says, oh no, that is unlawful. There can be contradictions. One cannot command what another forbids. That matters because it places a boundary on what the ahruf are allowed to be. It means you cannot use the ahruf as a blanket explanation for every kind of difference. So now we have a test. If the examples we look at later affect the commands that people give, the legal force, the rulings, or who exactly is being addressed in a morally significant way, then the claim that the aharuf do not differ in commandments starts coming under pressure. So his claim here by the Tabi'in saying that, hey, you can have differences between the different aharufs. One can command something yes, and then the other can command the opposite. Now we can sit down and start actually, testing this theory out. Okay, let's do that, folks. This is interesting. Example number one. This is from, on the left hand side, you have a reading from today's Quran, chapter 24:33. Okay, here's the first concrete example. In today's canonical reading of Quran chapter 24:33, the verse says that Allah is, after their compulsion, forgiving and merciful, but in the reading attributed to Ibn Masud on the right, extra wording makes the target explicit. Allah is merciful to the females after their compulsion. That is important, the difference. So Ibn Masud, the Sahabas, has that to the females on the right, which the left doesn't have it. It is important because it's not just a pronunciation dialectical issue. The reading more clearly points to the mercy towards the slave girls being forced. This actual hadith, this Quran is talking about slaves girls who are being forced to have to be sold into prostitution. Now remember who Ibn Masud is. He's not some obscure outsiders as we talked about. Bukhari reports Muhammad saying to learn the recitation from figures, including Ibn Masud, is what we just stated. So if Ibn Masud is one of those four reading, if Ibn Masud is reading the wording that does not line up with the later canonized qira'ats, today's Quran, then people who say all aharuf survived in canonized readings have a real problem. Where did he get that reading from? If from Muhammad, then some earlier reading materials appears to stand outside the later canon. If not, then why is one of the major authorities on Quranic recitation reading it that way? That is exactly the pressure point. Example number two. In example number two, we have, you know what I did? I think I messed up on my, I'll just, yeah, on my notes on this example. On the example number two, you have, which is in today's canonical reading, in one kirat, it says, that you may believe in Allah and His Messenger, support Him and honor Him, and glorify Him in the morning and evening. In example number two, on another kirat, it reads, that you may believe uh, in Allah and His Messenger, support Him and honor Him, and they glorify Allah morning and evening. So it is making sure that the glorification is happening to Allah and not Muhammad. On the left hand side, it leaves it open for interpretation. It leaves it open because somebody who's reading the Quran is using the one version of the Quran. Like for example, Morocco heavily uses the Warsh version. Saudi Arabia uses the Hafs version. So the reading changes who is explicitly being glorified. It adds wording not found in later canonized qira'ats. And if all the ahruf survive in the canon, where does this companion associating reading fit? So this is again not just pronunciation, it affects the referent and the sense of the line. Okay, now, okay, this third one is pretty important. Here is a legal ruling, folks. Differences in legal ruling. The Hafs Quran on the left reads, and it's talking about something very important. What this third example is doing, one reading says that the compensation is for feeding a poor person, singular, one person. Another reading says the poor people, plural. It's not a tiny difference. What it's talking about is that it's saying if you're a Muslim trying to make up for a missed fasting, if you miss a fasting, it's telling you what you can do to make up for it. What exactly has Allah required from you? On the left hand side, people who have Hafs Quran, Muslims who read Hafs Quran, it says feed one person, a poor person. And on the right hand side, it says feed for poor people. Singular or plural. I'll tell you something else. In Arabic, plural really means 3 plus, not 2 plus, 3 plus. So that means the difference is not merely stylistic, it actually affects the performance of the religious obligation. If you miss your fasting, this is how you can make up. One set of people are going to just feed one person, and the other set of people are going to feed multiple people. And in their case, multiple always in Arabic, for whatever reason, is 3 plus. But who cares, even if it's 2 plus? But this is a legal ruling that you're going to get into trouble with. And that is why this example matters so much in the Ahruf discussion. If one side says the Ahruf do not differ in commands or prohibitions, then examples like this create pressure because this is the difference that directly touches what a believer is expected to do. This is a legal ruling, and we've got two different kinds. So now someone may try to argue that both still fall under the same broad command of feeding the poor, but even then, the obligation is not identical. One reading gives a lower threshold, the other gives a higher threshold. So the practical rule is not the same. So, what do these examples that I've showed show you? Let's step back and take a look at what these examples are doing. First, they show you that the companion linked readings can sit outside the later canonized Qurans people have today. That already pressures the claim that all ahruf neatly survive inside the later canons and the later Qurans that people are reading today. Second, these examples are not just about sound and accent or harmless word shifts. Some of them affect who is being referred to, who is being singled out, and what a Muslim is expected to do in practice. And that creates pressure on the second claim too. That claim that the ahruf do not differ in matters of command or permission or rulings and prohibition is rubbish. So the point is not that every example settles every debate by itself. The point is that once you put them together, that simplified story that Muslims try to tell us what an ahruf is starts breaking down. The ahruf problem does not go away, it gets sharper.